Okay, welcome to tonight's Sangha evening, where we'll be visiting the apple tree incident or memory, a rose apple tree incident or memory together. My name's Sraddhabha, as I said, and it means she who shines with the light and confidence of faith. And before we start with the talk, I'd just like us to have a few minutes of settling in, just to sort of leave behind the concerns and worries and preoccupations of the day. So if you would just like to lower your gaze or close your eyes and just relax. So if you give your weight up to the cushion or the chair and ultimately the earth. And as you become physically still, give your mind a chance to catch up with the body. Allow your awareness to drop gradually into the body and percolate through it. If you feel distracted, come back to smoothing or soothing your awareness back into the body. If you feel scattered, drop into contact with the ground and the earth through which we're connected with all other beings on the planet. We share the same earth and we walk the same paths. Move your awareness to somewhere in the body where the sensations are strongest. Keep the breath natural and relax into it. Now move your awareness to somewhere in the body where the sensations are more subtle. And be curious and interested and stay with that subtlety. And now expand your awareness to your whole body, as if breathing in and out from every pore of your skin. And in your own time, open your eyes. Okay. Now I'm just going to give you an outline for tonight's Sangha session. I'm going to give a talk for about 20 minutes on the rose apple tree memory. I'm going to offer a brief preface as to where Siddhartha has got up to on his quest to enlightenment when he revisits this memory from when he was a younger child. And then I'm going to look at a couple of symbols that just piqued my interest, really. The rose apple tree itself, and the fact that certainly in some versions, Siddhartha is about 9 or 10 or 11, just on the cusp of adolescence. And that particularly interests me in terms of the message of that and the implications for our sons. And then I'll invite you to sit back and listen to the story itself. And then look at the fruits of bringing it to mind for Siddhartha, how it was a pivotal moment for him on his quest for enlightenment. And finally, the fruits of bringing it to mind for us. What does it mean for us? And there's a number of things that it actually means for us, and that we can actually reflect on in terms of our meditation practice, in terms of our life, our spiritual practice, or our life generally. And then I'm going to ask you 2 or 3 questions in small groups to reflect on those fruits of bringing the story to mind for us. And then we'll have a break, and then we're going to have a metta bhavana meditation. Slightly different this time. But yeah, I think that's basically the program. I'm happy with that. All right, so Siddhartha on his quest for awakening. He's 36 years old. He finds himself near Bodh Gaya when we're meeting this evening. He's renounced his home and his family and everything dear to him in search of an end to suffering and of enlightenment. According to some accounts, he's been on the path for about 6 years. He's followed renowned teachers of meditation and excelled at the practices they wanted him to lead. He's experienced the states of deep absorption in meditation, but it's required much effort for him to still the mind, and the effects have not lasted. He described himself as a man trying to tie the air into knots. He's then turned to ascetic practices, extreme practices designed to push his body and mind to the limits of endurance. Very popular at the time as a way to gain insight. And Siddhartha was very good at this too, but it didn't work, and very nearly led to his death from starvation. So he abandons his practices, and his fellow ascetics turn away. He asked himself an important question: is there another way to enlightenment? And he didn't know the answer. He had the courage to actually own up and reflect on the fact that the practices that he'd been following over a number of years weren't working for him. And this opened him up to a particular memory when he was about, 9 or 10 or 11. of him sitting under a rose apple tree. So when I started thinking about the rose apple tree incident, there were a couple of symbols that came to mind. And so Siddhartha Gautama is 9 or 10. He's at the cusp of childhood and adolescence at this age. And yeah, children at this time are interesting, they're passionate, they're curious about why the way things are. They challenge authority and they make very valid points whilst doing so. So it's a time which symbolises a letting go of childhood and a moving on to adolescence. Children at this age have a greater sense of fairness and empathy for all living beings, a growing confidence in their ability, and things seem simpler and less complicated than they are later on. So whether Siddhartha was 9 or 10, or whether it was just before he set forth, in terms of when this memory happened, it's about letting go of one stage and questioning the status quo and seeing how things are and becoming curious about them. They're all relevant points for us to consider in this story. So the second one was the rose apple tree. Now, I don't know whether I've been living in a dream for the past 30 odd years, but I had never considered that the rose apple tree was not an apple tree. And in fact, it's not. It's not an apple tree at all. It's not a rosy apple tree. Despite the name, the rose apple tree isn't related to apples or to roses. The fruit is smaller and softer than the apple tree. The fruits have a consistency of apple and a faint smell of roses. That's how it gets its name. The fruits perish very quickly. The birds get them before humans do. So you have to eat them there and then. They're sort of light green or yellow when very ripe. Like a small apple in shape, with a slight scent of rose, which is used in India to make rose water. And the bark of the rose apple tree is used to treat asthma. Tea from the flowers is used to reduce fever, and a leaf potion relieves sore eyes. So you can see where I'm getting at in terms of the rose apple tree. I mean, the tree in mythology, in Buddhist mythology, represents immortality. And it's associated with the first documented meditation that Siddhartha undertook, witnessed by others. So the shade of the rose apple tree is reported to have lasted for several hours, all day, not moving with the sun. And the tree was seen to protect Siddhartha, and symbolizing the sort of feminine, nurturing element of nature, embodied as a goddess. So the tree provides the conditions for Siddhartha's meditation to take place, despite what was going on around him and the heat of the sun. All interesting facts to note. So, the rose apple tree memory, taken from Bodhi terms. So Siddhartha is now remembering how, when he was younger, he'd reached a mental state of tranquility and profound happiness, quite by accident. He remembered his first meditation under a rose apple tree as a child. It was the day of the first ploughing of the fields. There was a big ceremony. Everyone would dress up, there'd be food and drink and flags, and holy men would chant prayers to ask for blessings for a good crop. Siddhartha was aged about 9 or 10, and his father, King Sraddhabha, and his family and the entourage would attend the festival. Soon the children got tired of the readings and they were led out to the fields to watch the actual ploughing. Siddhartha saw his father, King, take part in the first ceremonial plough. He then watched a man take up the plough with a water buffalo, and he followed both of them as they were sweating and working so hard to make the furrows in the hot sun. He noticed that the plough turned up worms, some trying to find cover, others cut in half, and his heart went out to them. Birds gathered nearby for the easy pickings. Suddenly a hawk swept down and carried off one of the small birds. Siddhartha watched all this unfold in silence, and he felt the suffering and the pain and the unpredictability of life. Siddhartha took shelter under the rose apple tree. He curled up his legs, he straightened his body, he gathered his breath. He reflected on the scene he'd witnessed and sat detached from the noise of the children nearby, laughing and playing around him. Soon his thoughts subsided and he experienced a calm awareness. He observed the many conditions that brought fear and pain to some and enjoyment to others. It was different for everyone. Yet, he reflected, everyone wanted to avoid suffering. Everyone wished for happiness and joy, and everyone was connected by this wish. Siddhartha suddenly found himself in a delightful state of mind, completely relaxed in body, contented, calm, still, but still experiencing the deep fragility of life. He recognized that turning within by intuitive thought and heart, trusting his own experience, even if it challenged other spiritual practitioners, was the way for him, and that this was through meditation. For me, I really appreciated being able to talk about this because it took me back to a time myself when I was about 10, and something quite similar happened to me as happened to Siddhartha in that memory. And I went to a primary school that was in a city. It was very lively, to say the least. And round about 10, I think I was a prefect, I seem to remember, and had playground duty. It was quite important to look after the younger ones in this school from the older ones, hustle and bustle. And I'd just finished my playground duty and the sun was shining, it was spring, and I was sitting down on a bench. I've got nowhere to be, nothing to do, nowhere to go. And I was just sitting with my eyes closed and reflecting on how beautiful that was, not to have anything to do. And I noticed that there was a sort of receding. I could hear the noise of the children, some fighting. I could hear some adults in the background. I could hear some screams. I could hear sounds of joy. And it all receded. And it felt like I was on a beach. You know that sensation that you get when you're on a beach, when you've got your eyes closed and you can hear life unfolding all around you. And I had a sense of absolute peace and yeah, contentment. And I've never forgotten this, And that was some time ago, believe me. And so, although accounts differ as to how old Siddhartha was when he had this memory, it certainly fits, it chimes and resonates for me with regard to my experience.